from.
Hey guys, this is Chesney Hawkes here. You are watching My Hammers 11 with the one and only Russ.
Hi everybody, we're still fourth in the league. Russ and My Hammers 11. Hope you're all safe and well. New to the channel, please consider subscribing, hitting the bell icon so you're made aware anytime I put new content on. As always, I'd like to thank our lovely channel sponsors, Untuck It. Check them out in the description below. That's all done. Today's guest comes highly regarded by a friend of the channel, Len Herbert from Alderville Promotions. It's Terry Connelly. How are we, Terry?
I'm extremely well, thank you very much. Delighted to be here.
Delighted to be here. Delighted to be fourth in the league as well.
Absolutely. It's one of those, so rare, it's unbelievable, isn't it?
Do you know, yeah. I was talking to a Wolves fan today. He came on my channel. I came on his channel this evening, and he just said, "Look, fair play to you guys. We're all us Wolves fans are all behind you to get into the top four." And I think there's a real sort of groundswell of support, from non-West Ham fans to see where we can finish this season.
Well, people used to say a long time ago that West Ham are everybody's favourite second team. Whether that's still the case, I don't know. But over the years, we've been a team that's played good football and not given many people reason to dislike us.
Yeah,
as a club, the club's been a good club.
Yeah,
and we've gone forward. And this year, I think we deserve in everything we're getting at the moment.
Yeah, I do.
The boys are getting stuck in, aren't they? Don't give in, this team.
No, don't give in this team. And I think there's definitely, it seems a slight turnaround of other teams is, the way they look at us. I think there was a little bit of hostility when we moved into London Stadium and things like that from other fans outside of West Ham. But it seems, with Moyes, because everyone respects the fact that, David was given a second chance, and obviously with someone like Declan Rice in there and Lingard and stuff like that, it seems to be that, people are sort of really, really, really sort of gunning for us, hoping we'll break into that top four. So, yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's weird.
It's weird, but it's welcome. It is well. It's nice to go to bed with a smile on your face.
Exactly. And also with everything going on else in the world, having not having to worry about a relegation battle is a nice distraction. It's a lovely distraction.
It certainly is. Yeah, I love it.
I do. When I was doing sort of the calculation thing, looking at where, and usually I'm doing it thinking, okay, well, if we win, let's look at Burnley and and we'll stay up if we do this. No, it's not. Now it's like, well, where are we going to finish this season? It's a whole turnaround. It's very uncharted territory for myself. Very strange, but as you said, I'm loving it too.
Us older guys have known a few battles over the years, and seen some great teams, but some poor teams as well.
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, and for me now, what's important now, ever the West Ham pessimist, it's not necessarily where we finish this season. Now, I'm more interested in where we finish next season, because traditionally we have a really good season and 4 or 5 really rubbish seasons. So if we finish this, 7th, 8th next season, then that's progress for me. That's where we should be.
Yeah. Well, we finished 7th or 8th this season. It's progress. To be fair.
Exactly. They said to you at the beginning of the season with that horrible fixture list and having sold Grady Dean Garner and everything else, and to say, okay, well, you're gonna be, you're still in Champions League contention with 8 games to go. You'd have thought they're absolutely sent to the loony bin.
Bite their arms off, wouldn't you, for that? Absolutely.
10th. I would have taken 10th. I'd beat someone on for 10th. Do you know what I mean? So, no, but you're right. It's a team at the moment, and obviously with Declan out, it was a huge blow. But where before, I think if we had like a major injury like that, it would completely derail our team. But this team's different. This team now seems to be. Well, it's team. Everyone else pulled up and put. Mark played a fantastic game yesterday, I think, for him, and.
He gets so many critics, doesn't he? But he played well last night.
He does. He did play well, but I think he played well because he wasn't playing in a role which the role he was playing yesterday, I think, suits his game. He's always been a defensive midfielder, really, and so he was playing his position which he should be playing. So it's only because that's the position that Declan Rice usually plays. So he has to play somewhere else. So
absolutely.
And hopefully with Leicester on Sunday, if we beat them, we're 1 point off behind them.
Yeah, that's incredible. And then we've got Chelsea a couple of weeks' time. We've got
Oh, yeah, and Everton as well.
big games coming up. But
Big
every
games.
game's a big game now. Every
Yeah.
game's a big game.
All we've got to do is simple. All we've got to do is win every one of our games and we're in the Champions League.
It's in our own hand. That's absolutely right. I think the toughest game could be Brighton.
Yeah, we never play well against Brighton, do
We
we?
play well against Brighton, and Brighton have been playing well this season.
Yeah.
They've done very
Well,
well.
I'm hoping. Part of me's hoping that Southampton beat Leicester in the semi-finals, because then the last game of the season they'll be literally their minds will be elsewhere. So particularly hopefully with 10,000 fans back in the stadium if Boris is open.
Yeah. I won't be one of them. I won't be one of them, sadly.
No. Fair enough. But I mean, it's great, and hopefully next season we'll have, back to full capacities, and all this horrible stuff will be not a distant memory, but will be a bookmark, a chapter in our history. So, yeah,
you're right. That's a good way of looking at it, Russ.
It is. I think I think it is. I think it's and it's definitely helped us. I think definitely not having any fans sometimes has helped us. That beginning of that season, particularly with Newcastle, that horrible game where we didn't win, we didn't play very well, we lost, and everything around with as I said, Grady being sold and all that stuff. I think not having fans there helped the team sort of get into the get loose, get ready into the season, feel their way into the season. Now we could have had them, because I think that Arsenal game we wouldn't have drawn. We'd have won that game with the crowd behind us.
That's right, with a lifted team, definitely.
Exactly, yeah. And I think they just need that little bit extra now. So, but hey ho, there's a lot of teams worse off than us. As I said, the Wolves guy, he was worried about going down. I was like, there's no way you're going.
Oh yeah, I mean last season they were flying, weren't they?
But they only had 3 days rest from their last game they played to when they started pre-season. He was saying so. Yeah, so because they had such a good European tour, didn't they? They played so well in Europe and stuff, and it just by the time obviously the games then got replayed because of COVID, and then they played the rest of the Europa League, and they literally only had like 3 or 4 days off before they started again. So they're running on empty, bless them. But
they're missing Jimenez. That's a big miss for them.
Huge miss. Although I quite like the boy Fabio Silva. I mean, that goal he took.
Yeah, he's lively. He's lively. Yeah. And the other player they're missing, of course, is Jota, the guy who went to. Another good player.
He was a very good player, and that's the trouble, isn't it? Once teams perform well, I mean, you look at Leeds. If Leeds don't do anything, Rafinha's probably going to go, and because these guys just get literally, fire sale. Anyone who's half decent, another team will nick them, won't they? And
we've been there many times.
Exactly. We were the proverbial
Rio and all these people.
Oh, it's crazy when you think about all the players that have gone. I mean, I'm doing a series at the moment with looking back at Mark Noble's career at West Ham and looking at, because some of the players that he played with, over 200 players in his time at West Ham so far, and some of the names that are coming up, you go, I forgot about him, and Denver Barr and all these. It's brilliant. Oh, I love it. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So Terry, you mentioned I don't call you old, an experienced fan. You're an experienced fan, but why West Ham, Terry? Why is it your team?
Well, when I was a boy, I was born in East Ham, not very far away from the ground in Mortimer Road. My dad started taking me the first time when I was 6, but I only saw the kids' games and the reserve games. About 1952, he started taking me.
Wow.
And then 1954, I saw my very first team game against Notts County, and we won 3-1 on the day. But the thing that struck me most was the crowd. I'd never seen that many people in one place making such a noise. Because obviously the kids' games, the reserve games, and reserve games used to get 8, 9, 10,000 people sometimes.
Yeah.
But to have a crowd of 20-odd thousand, I'd never seen that, and it was incredible. And they were all cheering. We won the game, and I came out of there, and that day they were my team.
That happens so often. I mean, we've interviewed over 300 people now. It's ridiculous, and each one of them has said the same thing. Whether they're a fan or a player, really, after that first game, that's it. They're hooked. They're hooked, and you
Because
blink, and you've been a fan for, a few years since then, Terry. To be honest,
yeah, I meant to look it up before I came on tonight, but I'm fairly certain in that first season, 3 of the next 4 games, could have been the next 3 games, they got beat by 4. I think they lost 2 games. They lost 2 games away from home, 4-0 or 4-1, and they lost at home by 4. But it was still. I went to go and see them. Couldn't wait to see them the next time.
yeah, still your team. But that's what I like West Ham. You won the first game, so they reeled you in, and then they said, "But we're going to lose the next game by 4, next 3 games by 4." So
Right.
you've got a lifetime of this.
Excuse me.
It's all right.
Yeah. So I started going regularly then. Sorry, I've got a frog in my throat from somewhere.
Don't worry.
Really typical, isn't it? So that's how I got started. Dad took me.
Brilliant.
He was in the Navy, so I never saw very much of Dad.
No.
And so what I used to do, I couldn't see every game in those days because I had to find some bigger boy who would take me.
Take you, yeah.
And when you're an 8-year-old kid, you're a pain in the arse. They don't want to. They don't want to see you because you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And you drag along. Well, sometimes a boy's dad would take me and that sort of thing. And it was
brilliant. And as you said, then you blink, and you've been a fan for a fair few years after that now. So
yeah. And what was great, of course, was just a few years after that we had the 57-8 championship season.
Yeah,
and I didn't miss a game that season. That was unbelievable. And it was great.
Yeah,
we were beating things for fun, as they say.
Yeah, that's always the thing, isn't it? I know that, the Premier League is the place to be, or the top division, but I've had probably my most fun times have been when we've been in the league below. Because you go to different places, you play different teams, you tend to win more than lose more as well, which is always nice. And you're the sort of you're the big boys, of that league usually. So, but yeah, it's I remember what was it? The last lot. I mean, this is 2012, wasn't it? The 2012, 11-12 season. That was just playing all these teams. Obviously getting to the playoffs, winning the playoffs at Wembley, and you wouldn't get that if you were 12th or 14th in the Premier League. Do you know what I mean?
You miss all that, don't you?
You do miss all that. Yeah.
Right.
You missed that day out and stuff, and obviously we had a few of them, in the sort of the 2000s, particularly. Obviously twice there at Cardiff, and then obviously going back for the FA Cup. I think this is the first year. I think it's the first time we've spent more than 10 years in the top flight, or 10 years in the Premier, something like that. There's some weird stat going around.
Yeah. But just going back to those times in the 50s, another good thing was, from a kid's point of view, is that we could mix with the players quite easily.
Yeah.
They used to train at Grange Farm, and during the summer holidays when they were pre-season training, we could get on our bikes from Manor Park, where I lived at the time. We'd ride over to Chigwell. We'd take our bottle of pop, our sandwiches, and we'd be there before the players got there, and we'd leave when the players left, because they trained morning and afternoon. During their lunch breaks, they'd have a kick around with you. It was great.
Brilliant.
And you knew them all. The kids today can't get that.
No, they can't. I think it's indicative, and I've had this discussion with lots of different people. I think it's indicative of modern football as well now. I think probably the last sort of bunch was probably that sort of early. It was probably towards the end of the Redknapp era. In terms of but not just, you had lots of access. So Harry used to have obviously Chadwell Heath open basically, and you'd have lots of personalities. You'd have your John Moncurs and your Razors and your Ian Wrights, and
they were all good with the kids.
They were all great with the kids, weren't they? And then unfortunately, I think sport and football in general has become so professional that these guys aren't necessarily. They're highly tuned athletes now.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's almost like they don't have that side of their personality. There's no disrespect to them, because they're earning millions and millions of pounds of money doing it, and fair play to them.
That's right. They've gone to a different level.
Exactly, and because of that money, they don't all live around in Loughton now. They or Buckersteel, or they all live in Canary Wharf in apartments, which is fair enough because that's the money they earn.
That's the lifestyle. But
It
my
is.
mum and dad used to run the fish and chip shop in the Barking Road opposite the town hall, and you get players would come in, go fish and chips.
Amazing.
You went shopping with your mum, you'd see them in the big co-op store that used to be on the corner where the traffic lights are near the Denmark. You go to pictures, you sometimes see them in the pictures.
Oh.
You certainly saw them on the buses, because they were part of the community. You'd get, sometimes you'd go to Upton Park, and I'm talking about now the early 60s, 62, something like that. You get on the train at Upton to come to Upton Park, and you'd see sometimes Bobby Moore getting off the train, because that's what they did before they became big. Then they got their cars, but you have to remember those days, not that many players had their own cars.
No, of course.
But now they're divorced from communities now. They're just not.
It's different now, isn't it? It's a different lifestyle now with them. I remember, God, as we said before we started, I lived in Loughton all my life, and that was a hotbed of around sort of that time when it was sort of the 2000s. They would all live around there, and Shaka used to come in for his Friday big shop at Safeways when I used to work there and stuff. And
really?
Oh, Shaq's did,
Shaka. I used to love him, Shaka.
We had him. Who else used to come in? Samasi Abu used to come in quite a bit for his ones, and I used to practice my sort of GCSE French. Because I always make sure I'd work on the Fridays because they were all in. Who was the one? The best one. The best one was Paul Kitson. So I saw Paul Kitson in Woolworths with the biggest bag of pick a mix I've ever seen in my life. Not like a little one. It was a proper bin liner. But you're right. They were part of the community there, and they wouldn't think anything of stopping and stuff. It's different now. Obviously it's even more different now because they can't stop and do anything because they can't even take your pen off you because of COVID. But I know what you mean, and just the way football stadiums. And then even until we left the bowling, really, you could still put your hand through the railing and get a signature. Because even if they came on the team bus, they'd still walk around. And obviously, with modern stadiums now, obviously the car parks are usually away from the crowds and stuff. So, it's a shame. It is a shame because, as you said, there's something special about, as you said, getting a bus and. We said, we had Stag on a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying how he bought a chopper, and he'd bike in to the stadium and to the bowling and stuff, and it's just a different world, completely different world.
I used to watch Brian play for East Ham Schoolboys.
Oh,
and he was playing for them when they got in the quarterfinals of the English Schools Trophy. Little
fantastic.
Fat winger.
I will love that.
He was good. I've known Brian for a long, long time, and Brian had his difficulties in life. But he's come through all that, and he's become a really great bloke to know. He's really good.
Yeah, no, I agree.
He's overcome his problems, and but I can remember him as a little rotund.
Rotund. I once had a school report once, and when I was at junior school, and I remember specifically because the teacher, his name was Mr. Dent. I remember him. He was a rotund fella as well, to be honest. And he said, "Russ, I'd written your school report, and I've crossed the line out because I said that you were a well-rounded pupil, and I thought you might have taken it to mean you had a big belly, so I changed it." And I was about 10 at the time. It's like Mr. 10, he could hardly speak, but anyway, rotunded. I think that's the best way to describe someone. Or barrel-chested.
Barrel-chested.
Yeah.
The best thing ever written in my school report, I can remember distinctly, I've still got my school reports, was Connolly is slow, slack and sluggish in performance.
Well, at least there's alliteration there, isn't there?
I think it's carried me through life.
Yeah.
I don't think I've changed much.
That's like when you get those film trailers, 5 stars, slow, sluggish, 3 stars,
Yeah, slow, slack and sluggish.
And and obviously, from supporting, as you've seen, you've seen everyone, really, haven't you? I mean, you've seen them all, really. I mean, we'll talk about who you're going to pick. You're going to have a really hard time, I think, picking an 11. But you obviously you went through the 60s and the 70s, and obviously the mid 80s, the early 80s, the mid 80s. Literally all of our modern success you've seen.
Very fortunate.
Very fortunate.
Seen so many finals and semi-finals and high-profile games. It's been great.
Yeah.
I feel I really want the new stadium to work for young supporters.
Yes.
I want them to be successful and enjoy everything that my generation enjoyed.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll do that, whether it's with these owners or somebody else, who knows.
Yeah, sure. And to be honest, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of the guys from the NL Lions group, and they're always very similar as well. They see the new stadium as a new beginning for the younger generation, and I think that's a really honest way of looking at it. It is. I mean, my daughter's 8; she's only known West Ham have played at the London Stadium. I made sure she went to the bowling, but she never remembers it. She was 2 at the 3 at the time, but and I think now with what Moyes is trying to do, there does seem to be a plan, and it's the first time for a long time I've seen sort of building blocks happen. Do you know what I mean? It tends to happen like we have a sporadic season. So I look at like the bowling season, for example, the last season of the bowling. The plan was give the ball to Payet.
That's right.
And that was it. Where here, I mean, it seems there's these building blocks, and when you listen to David Moyes talk, he talks about this transfer window and the following transfer window, and so there's this sort of succession plan, and I'm really excited. This is probably the most exciting. I mean, I've been working at West Ham for 20 years. It's my 20th season. This is the most excited I've been for a West Ham team, just because of what the potential could be.
That's great. Yeah,
we're a striker away from being dangerous.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I'm not that much involved these days, but going back, the company I worked for, we supplied the meat for the club. Supplied all the meat for the training grounds, so that sort of gave me access there. Because I would say I've got to go down this training ground, make sure the chefs are all right, blah blah blah, and then I would spend some time watching the training because I was lucky enough to get on well with some of the managers down there.
Brilliant.
So we supplied the club with the meat for the main ground as well, for the hospitality areas. So I got to know through people lots of stuff that was going on. But of course, these days I've cut myself away from it anyway. But I don't see it, so it's good to hear someone from the inside saying how good he feels it's looking.
Yeah, there is. I think there's a real buzz around everywhere. There's a buzz around the fan base. There seems a buzz around, social media where the club are putting out and videos and stuff like that. It just seems to be a lot more. There's a real sense of optimism, which is great. Which I thought all the wheels were going to come off yesterday when the news was Declan wasn't playing and everyone's like, but he didn't. Yeah. But it didn't. It was like everyone was like, "Oh, but we can do it," and it's a real change in mentality. From a quite fickle fan base, we are quite fickle, and it was encouraging to see. So
even when Antonio went off, I thought to myself then,
that's it.
We scored almost immediately. So that's great, and that shows the momentum the team have got at the moment. And the thing I like about this team, and bearing in mind I only see it on the television, so I'm not ideally suited to comment. But this team all seem comfortable on the ball.
Yeah.
And when I think back over the years to the West Ham team, even the players who weren't the best players were always comfortable on the ball.
Mm.
And when we had the building blocks of the youth team, used to get the under 18s, the reserves, and we had a reserve league, which is one of the things that, in my opinion, totally wrong with football today. There's no reserve leagues anymore.
Yeah.
If we had players injured in the first team, or Ron wanted to just change it up a bit, a player could come in from the boys' team, under 18, and would fit straight into that team because they all play the same system.
Yeah.
And they were all, as I said before, they were all comfortable on the ball.
Mm.
You very rarely saw them panic and whack it. They played the game. And this team, as I say, I've only seen it on television, but they all look to me like they can play a bit.
Mm. No, I agree.
And There was one famous day over the training ground when I'd gone to see the chef, and it was pre-season training, and they were in the little car park there. They were having a 6-a-side, 2-touch, bibs against bare chests. And there was this big blonde bloke there playing. And I said to Ronnie Boyce, "Ron, who's that big blonde fella?" He said, "Oh, that's Mike O'Booger's, Terry." I said, "Ron, he's crap." He said, "Terry, it's his first day." I said, "I don't care, Ron." I said, "He's crap." And whenever I see Ron there, we laugh about that day. Because he said, "You were right, Tel."
Yeah. And famously, Harry, because we've spoken to a few players and obviously quite a few, very fortunately, and we're speaking to who I speak to. It was Mad Dog, and Mad Dog used to room with Marco Boogers. Harry put the two together. It's like that's like fire.
Yeah.
And putting water, one of those chip pan fires, and putting water on it. Surely,
Yeah.
putting them two together. And he was like, "I couldn't believe
yeah.
Harry's put me together with him." But we roomed together. We went
Know
away.
that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, Marco Boogers turned me down for an interview the other day, so I'm always bitter about Marco Boogers. He's probably had so many requests, and he's probably so pissed off talking about tackling Gary Neville and
that was incredible that day.
Yeah,
Adds
to the fabric, doesn't it, of West Ham? It was that weird era where Harry brought in anyone. It seemed
Foreign Legion they called them. They didn't matter if they could play or not. Just got.
Just brilliant. But again, it's just these stories, wasn't it? Like that we don't get that anymore now. You don't get, someone like Javier Margas now, who, he obviously did a runner, didn't he? Jumped out the Swallow Hotel. Don't know why he didn't go out the front door, but he jumped out the Swallow Hotel, first floor window, and went to Chile and came back with a claret and blue hair.
I saw him over at Hainault Forest one day. I was over there one Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And it had been pouring the rain, the place was an absolute mud bath. And this bloke came crawling back to his car, or smothered in mud, head to toe, with two little kids. I looked at him. I said, "You're Margas, aren't you?" Yeah. So he was a decent bloke. I thought
he was a nice guy. He was a nice guy. His kids went to my old primary school. And my mate's mum was the sort of the people liaison person, and bless them, they didn't speak a word of English, but they did by the time they left. But
I know it's jumping back at a big tangent. But you're saying going to primary school. The first school I went to as an infant was Brampton, not Brampton Manor as it is today. The old Brampton school is still there. But I was about 5 years behind, but I followed Boyce and Stagg there.
Brilliant.
Because they both went to Brampton School. And some years later, when I went to Vicarage Lane School, they used to talk about Brian and Ronnie in those days. Yeah, it was, even in those days, it was good. They were well known, those two.
Funny, isn't it? It's funny. It's just one of those things, isn't it? And that's why I love, because it is something special about West Ham in terms of that sort of the not the early years, but that sort of period, as you mentioned. They're all local boys. They all live around the manor. As you said, they all went to the same schools. They all played youth team. And it's something special. A lot of, as you said, they'd get the bus in, or they'd cycle in or walk into the stadium. That's how close they were. And I think that's why West Ham was always sort of revered by a lot of non-West Ham supporters, because of that exact reason, because it was like a homegrown club. And that's why I think we sort of idolize when he's not playing people like Mark Noble and people like that, because they're a bit like a throwback.
They're a throwback. Exactly right. They're a total throwback. I mean, they used to, everyone goes on about the great Manchester United youth team, which, let's be fair, they produce some great players.
Not bad,
Not bad at all. But our team in 62-3, when we won the FA Youth Cup, 10 of that team played in the first team. And that was good progression. They never all made it, obviously, but apart from little Johnny Dryden, the left winger, they all played, every single one of them.
Crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, and even until, even when you look at the back, we've had a lot of the old 99 Youth Cup winners on. And, obviously they had Cole, they had Carrick, they had, we've had Stephen Bywater, they had Adam Newton, Izzy, they had Bertie, they had Richie Garcia. They had a fair few that maybe some made the first team at West Ham, but some then went on to have great careers elsewhere, as well.
that team was one of the times when I realised that supporters see things from a totally different perspective to professional football players. I said to Frank Lampard, Senior, this Adam Newton, I said, boy, what a player he is. What a prospect he is.
Yeah.
He said to me, Terry, he couldn't tackle a good breakfast, mate. He said he'll have a decent career in the lower divisions.
Yeah.
Which he did with Peterborough, I think.
Yeah, he did,
for a long time. He had a good career there. He was a decent player. But to me, I watched him particularly in that Coventry game when he was up the field, and I think he scored that night.
Yeah, scored both legs.
And I thought, boy, this is going to be a star, this lad. But Frank obviously saw it from a totally different perspective.
Yeah.
So that's when you realise the great thing about football is we've all got an opinion.
We do, yeah. No, we do, man.
It hasn't got to be right, but we enjoy our opinions. And the
exactly.
thing I used to enjoy walking over from Upton Park after yet another diabolical performance when I was 18 or 20 or whatever, and you'd with your mates and you'd moan the whole way home.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have played, and it was great. It was great fun.
Exactly. You sit back down, and then Monday morning, right, who you got on Saturday?
Who you got on Saturday? That's right.
Starts all over again, Terry. Right. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the Hammers 11s. Obviously, everyone we've had on the channel, apart from a few ex-players, actually, everyone else has basically put an 11 together. So the idea is you can pick whoever you want. Doesn't matter, whatever criteria. It doesn't have to be the best. It can be your favourite, your worst, whatever. But the only rule is you have to be alive to have seen them play. Now, no disrespect, Terry, but I think you've probably got one of the biggest spreads we've had.
I cover that. Yeah.
So pretty much everyone in the last 70 years, has you've seen play. So you've probably got the hardest and the easiest task at the same time because there's so many players. So we'll see what we can do. So we'll start off in goal. That's not going to be. It might be really hard, actually, to be honest. But who would be in goal for the Connolly 11?
You can only pick one goalkeeper. The best goalkeeper we've ever had at West Ham was Phil Parkes.
Roberto.
Everyone will say that by a country mile.
Yeah.
He's a great shot stopper. Commanded the penalty area. Famously knocked Billy out of the way and broke his ribs when Bill was going to play for England. One of the occasions he got picked and Phil Parkes just came, took the ball, took Billy. I think he broke 2 of his ribs and Bill didn't play for England. But great goalkeeper.
Yeah.
I remember driving home in the car. I worked up at Smithfield, got in my car, drove past the Barbican station, and there was a newspaper placard said West Ham, not West Ham, it was London clubs in record transfer fee. And I stopped the car, got the paper, and looked on the back page and couldn't believe we'd paid £565,000 for And then I think I used to go to away games in those days. I went to Luton. I think it was Luton his first game, maybe. We beat them 4-1 away, something like that.
Yeah.
I think that was his first game. I might be wrong. But anyway, he came, and boy, did he make a difference in goal.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just a colossus of a man, wasn't he? He's probably the last, because obviously then we went to Ludo and more sort of athletic builds where Phil was just like a unit, wasn't he? He was just an absolute colossus of a man. And he obviously with the mullet, it was another foot on top really as well, so.
But for a big man, he could get down, he could get down the low balls. And I took him once after he finished playing, I took him out to see Ernie Gregory.
Yeah,
in his house in Ilford, and they had a great afternoon just talking about it. But Ernie had always said to me that Phil was the best West Ham goalkeeper he'd seen, including himself. And he said we really had to work on him when he first came there in the sandpit, getting him down low, both sides. And he was a great goalkeeper. To only play once for England, it was a travesty really, but he had the other great goalkeepers around him at the time.
That's the thing, it happens more often than not with West Ham players, isn't it? 5 years either side and he would have played hundreds of times for England, but it's and obviously he turns, was it 70 last year as well? So
it's just cracking on. Time is just remorseless.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
It goes on and on and on. Anyway, so there we are.
We'll put Phil in first. Okay, let's move into defence. You go through who you want to in terms of the order you want to. So it's up to you who you want to put in next, Terry.
Well, I'd look at the way I'd set a team up would we 4-4-2. I saw a lot of
Nice.
that when I was younger.
Yeah.
My right back, if you like, or right sided of the back four, might surprise some people in terms of playing him at that position rather than midfield player. I played Billy Bonds there.
Yeah.
Bill was a great athlete. He could get up the wing, great wing back. I've said this to Bill before when I've spoken to him, when I've told him about my best West Ham team in the past.
Yeah.
I'd have him at right back every day. He could tackle. Players didn't get past Billy very often.
No.
His positional play was good. I thought long and hard about it because in terms of being a real right back, Ray Stewart was one of the best. Because the great attribute Ray had was that he'd cover across the back.
Yes.
He really was good at that. He'd cover across the back when we were stretched. And I thought long and hard about having him at right back and having Bill in midfield. But the way I wanted to set the team up, Bill had to be at right back.
I like it. I like
Simple
it.
as that.
And we bought him. I mean, he came as a right back, didn't we? We bought him as a right back start.
He was a right back, and that's when I saw him first playing. And I saw his first game he played in the testimonial match, Brownie's testimonial.
Yeah.
And he only played 45 minutes, but I thought to myself then, again, walking home with one of my friends, and I said, boy, this bloke, I don't like the expression, but I said, he's got an engine, this boy.
Yeah.
He would really move, and even in a friendly game like that, he was putting in.
Yeah.
He wasn't there just for a kickabout. He was running. So that was my first sign of him. Great athlete. You could see he looked after himself. You could see he had a great physique. Yeah, really good.
And even more so, I mean, he looked fit as a fiddle last season when he did the Newcastle game. When they named the stand after him, he could look like he still could do a job. Still as fit as anything. Bless him.
I haven't seen Bill for a while now. But I'd like to see him again. I haven't seen him recently, but I will do one day. I expect.
We all will do. We'll all see each other again soon, won't we? Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Right. Okay. Let's put Bill in. Who's next then, Terry? Who's next?
Well, alongside him.
Yep.
Alvin Martin.
Yeah.
I've seen some really good centre halves over the years down at West Ham. Kenny Brown, different era altogether. He was a straight up and down centre half. Kenny was head the ball, kick the ball, got the ball, basically gave it to Bob. That was his idea. Cover around behind Bob just in case Moore made a mistake, but it didn't do it very often, obviously. Yeah. So that was what Kenny did. And I thought about Rio. Rio, really good centre half.
Yeah.
Carry the ball out. But in the team I wanted, I didn't want a centre half doing that. I didn't want a centre half who carried the ball out. I wanted a good, physical, strong in the air, didn't mind getting his face bashed up.
Yeah.
And he could carry the ball. Rio carried the ball, but in my mind, to play in my back four, he carried the ball too much.
Sure. No, I understand. That makes sense.
I want a really strong physical centre half, which is what Alvin was. And he could score a goal.
Yeah.
When he needed to, he could score a goal, couldn't he?
He certainly
famously the 3 against Newcastle, but and the header against Aston Villa. He could score a goal, Alvin. So great defender. Again, great physical attributes.
Yeah. You're right, and I know exactly what you mean. Like sometimes, you want a defender just to be a defender, I think that's why someone like I'm not comparing Alvin Martin at all to Craig Dawson, but that sort of like boot it. I'm doing a new series soon called Boot It Like Dawson, not Bend It Like Beckham, Boot It Like Dawson.
Boot It Like Dawson.
But I think that's what we want at West Ham necessarily. We don't necessarily want ball playing. You need the person who will put, as you said, his body on the line. He'll put any part of his body in the way of the ball.
I must admit, as I said, from watching it on television, for me, he's been a total revelation. He's made a mug of me because when we
made a mug of everyone.
When we signed him, I thought, there's a 30-year-old, can't get in Watford's team, so he's coming out to us to earn a few quid, hang around to the end of the season. But my God, he's been doing it. Can't
Well,
argue with that.
that's what all the Watford guys were saying. They're like, thank you for getting. He was our worst player. He's our worst player.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
well, Christ, what those rest of your team are like if he's your worst player. But he's yeah, I think he's made a mug of everyone. I think Craig Dawson, and fair play to him, and obviously he's signed permanently today because
Yeah, that's right.
he's got, which is great.
He deserved it. He's deserved it. And that shows the club are actually using their heads for once.
Exactly.
He reminds you the way he throws his body in, a bit like Collins. Collins always did that.
Yep.
He
Definitely.
get himself in the way of the ball. Didn't matter how he stopped it, as long as he stopped it.
Yeah, totally. No, I totally agree, my man. I totally agree. No, so we'll put Alvin in. So we've got Billy, we've got Alvin, we've got Stretch rather. Who's next?
Alongside him can only be the great Morrow, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Got to be Bobby Moore.
If you didn't put Bobby Moore in, I was going to have a go at you.
Because I said about Rio carrying the ball.
Yeah.
I didn't want him playing centre half. I wanted the centre half who could, when the ball carrier went forward, the centre half would be there. So Bobby, he'd carry the ball, and Alvin would be behind him. That'd be solid. And when you saw Bobby in the early 60s, he was doing things. You'd have a crowded penalty area, so many bodies in there. The ball would come back, 6-yard box, and this is not fanciful rose-tinted glasses. The ball would come there, and Bobby would go, Jim, and head it to him in the 6-yard box. It was some of the things he did with the football. And for me, one of the finest sights I've ever remembered in football was when the other team would play a long ball out of their half, whether it was an attempted long pass or just a kick out. And the ball would come to Bob, and you could see him. He'd be going to catch it on his chest, and as he was doing that, he's looking. And when he got the ball down, he laid it. He always knew, a lot of people have said this before, and you can read it in books or whatever, but I saw it. He knew what he was going to do before he got the ball virtually.
Yeah.
And he was always on the look. And it was great. His control was immaculate. Very rarely lost a ball for a miscontrol. He did dreadfully against Poland, wasn't it? I think in that qualifying game. He lost the ball, didn't he? But that happens. You're going to make a mistake. But Bobby made very, very few mistakes. Very few. And could tackle, despite what people said about him. When you see his sliding tackles, or he could tackle from behind, which they did do in those days, but Bobby never took the player. He'd be able to read it, and he'd stretch his leg around him and knock the ball away, or he'd slide in front of him and knock the ball away. Very rarely took the player. The only time I ever saw Bobby take the player out deliberately was first leg of the League Cup final against Stoke at Victoria Road. We won that game, didn't we? But in the last minute, we were winning 2-1. I think Jimmy Greenough broke away. Bobby was the last man, and he wasn't always, everyone knows, he wasn't always blessed with the greatest pace, Bobby, but his positional sense was unbelievable. But Jimmy Greenough got past him, and more, he went down on his left leg, and he stretched his right foot out, and he just clipped Greenoff's heel and smacked him down. And I'm not saying he got booked or not, he probably didn't get booked, but we were all in this thing called the paddock at the Victoria Road ground, and we're all singing, he's here, he's there, he's every bloody where, Bobby Moore. It was fantastic. They were all booing the Stoke supporters, but that was the only time I think I can remember that I ever saw Bobby deliberately take a player out. He got sent off today, obviously, but so a West Ham team, best 11 without Bobby Moore in it is unthinkable.
Yeah, no, exactly. And as you're fortunate enough to have seen him, throughout his entire West Ham career, and so it's obviously, yes, that's why I love doing these shows, because I could read it in a book or I could see it on YouTube or whatever, but you saw it, so I'm sort of living those memories through you, and that I just think it's brilliant, absolutely fantastic.
I saw his debut against Man United, but I don't remember a thing about Bobby in that game.
No,
because my dad, he died around about that time, or just a little bit after that, and he couldn't go to that game. And he'd come back from the sea, and he wasn't well. He had a bad heart, and he died on the operating table. But that particular game, when I was so excited, we were going to play Manchester United. He said to me, "You've got to look at a little fella plays for Man United." He said, Ernie Taylor. Played for Blackpool in the Matthews Cup final. I said, "You watch him, boy. You watch him." And I did watch him. So I don't remember. I saw Bobby, but don't remember a thing about it. And that's the honest truth.
It's like player cam, isn't it? They had that used to have player cam, didn't they, on Sky, where they used to focus on one player. That's what you were doing.
Right. That's what I was doing. Just watching him round. Yeah, absolutely, watching him round.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dad. So we put Moro in. He's in.
Yeah.
Nailed in. Okay, so let's go left back then. Who's going to be left back?
Left back, we've seen some in the not too distant past, some bloody good left backs. Julian Dix, obviously a very, very talismanic figure. The crowd loved him.
Yeah,
idol with them. Most of the crowd. He was good. Frank Lampard, superb. I think a much better left back than Julian in terms of overall football ability, and didn't tend to lose his rag like Julian did. Julian, great player, but could be a liability. No doubt about that. But my best left back that I enjoyed watching, fitted in with Bobby, also got down the wing, could cross a ball, could score a goal, he could tackle. That'd be Noel Cantwell.
Nice.
He was a super left back and a very nice bloke to boot, because he obviously played with Johnny Bond on the other side, but he could get up the field surprisingly quickly, and he tackled. He had thighs like tree trunks, and he would tackle a wall. He really would. He was a superb player. He told me, I got to know Noel. When they used to go over to Grange Farm, every day Noel would get on my bike. He'd get out of his car, give me his training gear, because in those days they quite often took their own gear home, washed it, and he used to get on my bike and ride it down. I don't know if you know Grange Farm, but he used to go down to the changing rooms down the bottom, and so I got to know him over the years. But he just, to me, he epitomised everything I liked about him being a good man. And he told me a story when he went to Manchester United. He spoke to Matt Busby, and I don't know if you're allowed to swear in this or not.
Of course you are.
Just delicately. he said, I said to Matt Busby, I said, how do you see me fitting into the team, boss? He said, well, what do you mean? He said, do you like me to stay out wide, man mark? You want me to tuck in? Do you expect me to get up? How do you expect me to play? And Matt Busby said to him, well, you're a left back, aren't you? He said, yeah. He said, well, play like a fucking left back. And that's what he said to him. So he said, Matt Busby wasn't the most astute man at tactics. It was, I think, it was Jimmy Dunn. Not Jimmy Dunn. Was it Jimmy Dunn, his assistant? Murphy was his assistant. And he looked after all the coaching side of it and getting the boys and everything. Matt didn't do a lot of that. Matt was one of these blokes who, a bit like Cloughie in his day, just used to shout at the players.
Just leave it to Peter Taylor to do it all,
and leave it to somebody else to actually deal with it. So, but that was Noel's introduction to Manchester United.
Brilliant. Obviously, again, for those of us who obviously weren't around to see Noel, obviously he captained the team to the 57-58 League Two title, didn't he? I think, and he went when he went to Man United. I remember because I'd done my research about Noel Cantwell. When he went to Man United, that was a record for a fullback at the time, wasn't it? I think
it was, 23,500 like that.
Wow!
But he captained Man United in an FA Cup win as well. He was captain when they won the FA Cup. He was, and he also, he was captain of Ayr, Ireland.
Yep.
And he also played cricket for them. And he played cricket for Ireland when they played the famous West Indian team that had the 3 W's in it, Worrell, Weeks and Walcott, and the young Gary Sobers. They played a one-day game and Ireland beat them. I think they bowled Ireland, they bowled the West Indies out something like 57, under 60 anyway, and Noel took 3 catches. So he was a great all-rounder, was Noel.
But they all are, aren't they? It's like, it's something about footballers and just, they're always good at golf and a lot of them play cricket and stuff as well. It's all that sort of hand-eye coordination, wasn't it?
In that 60s, we had great cricketers at West Ham in the 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeff played obviously once for Essex.
He did, yeah.
Bobby played for Essex seconds. Eddie Preston played for Essex. Jim, of course, playing for Worcestershire.
Yeah.
So we had some bloody good players. And then obviously Ron Tyndall came along. He played for Surrey, didn't he?
Fantastic.
That was in the days when the seasons overlapped. They don't anymore.
Yeah, they don't.
Anyway,
yeah. No, I love it. I love the honestly, I love it because I'm not being funny. It's very rare we have someone who's had such a West Ham fan career. So, I love listening. That's like, I mean, when we interviewed Stag, I literally sat there and let him just talk. Just telling me all these stories, and I love talking to the more experienced players and fans.
That's nice, thank you. I always love it with Brian. You're walking along somewhere, meet a total stranger, say, "Do you know who I am?"
Yeah.
It's really great.
Really, he's funny. He's funny. I haven't got the heart to tell him I don't like. He's going to watch this anyway. I haven't got the heart to tell him I don't like, like cockles and things like that. He wants to take me down Lee when it opens up, and I don't really like any of that. My wife loves it, but I don't like it. So
there's a good story. Brian said to me one day, "Get Eddie, you and Eddie come over to my place for a Sunday lunch."
Yeah.
So this went on and on for ages and ages and ages. Never happened because Brian is a bit like that sometimes. But eventually we worked out a weekend, a Sunday. And Brian said to me, don't tell Eddie, but we're going to go to Andy Smiley's place.
Yeah.
On the front at Westcliff. He said, we're going to go there and have lunch. He said, it's dry there. He said, so if you want to bring a couple of bottles of wine or whatever, they'll cook it for you, but they haven't got a license. Yeah. He said, I'm going to go and pick the strawberries. So we're going to have strawberries and ice cream. We're all going to have fish and chips, strawberries and ice cream. Anyway, we met him down the Cockle Sheds. Eddie and I had a couple of pints. He had a cup of coffee, I think. And off we go. And going to Brian's. And Eddie said, where are we going? Where are we going? I said, shut up, Eddie, shut up. So we pulled up just along the road there where you can park in the middle of the road. Got out of the car and started walking back. He said, I thought we were going to Stags. I said, Eddie, for fuck's sake, shut up. As we walked along, we got to this place and Martin Peters stands up.
Brilliant.
Martin was there. I didn't know Brian had organised that. And Andy came out, and Eddie had not seen Andy for 40 years. They played in the same FAU Cup team.
Yeah, they must have played together, yeah.
Yeah, but not seen him for 40 years, Eddie. And so we had a great day that day. And the funniest thing was, we were sitting there, and Kathy, poor Martin's missus, Kathy said to Eddie, you've got my Martin's medal, you have. So Eddie sort of looked at her, he said, what? She said, you've got my Martin's FA Cup medal. And Eddie said, didn't he get enough then in his career?
Didn't that 66 one mean anything?
And Martin was going like that.
Oh, I can imagine.
He was trying to duck out of sight. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
But that was great. That was a great day out. Anyway, left back.
Yeah, Noel Cantwell, anyway. Let's move into midfield then Terry. Who's your first midfielder?
Well, again, I haven't got what you call the strongest midfield in terms of tackling, but I'd want my 2 wing backs to be tacklers. To get up there and support the midfield, because the whole idea of 4-4-2 is you move up and down and you drop into position, you change position. So number 7 on the right hand side, I'll have Martin Peters.
Yeah.
Purely because of all the attributes that everyone who ever saw him or read about him or seen him on the television or whatever knows. He was very, very skillful player, scored plenty of goals, could ping a ball anywhere. And the thing that a lot of people don't actually appreciate about Martin was he was hard. Martin could leave his foot in with the best of them.
Sure.
They didn't take liberties with Martin Peters. He was a hard player. Forget all this stuff about 10 years ahead of his time, he's ghosting here and ghosting that. Yeah, he did all that, but when he had to kick someone, he kicked them. Not throughout the game, but people didn't take liberties with him.
Yes,
he wasn't a sort of a Johnny Giles type, or Graham Souness, who just kicked players for the fun of it.
Yeah,
I think they really did. When I used to take my kids to watch Graham Souness play against West Ham for Liverpool, I used to say to them, when you see Souness going into a tackle, I said, don't follow the ball after the tackle. I said, you look and see how many times the West Ham players finished laying on the ground, where Souness would go through him and kick him. And that's true. That's what he did. And that's what Johnny Giles did. And they were past masters at it.
Yeah.
The referee might go, he'd shake his head. But, that's what they used to do. But Martin, great player. No doubt about that. Tremendous control. Could play anywhere across the team. Scored more than his fair share of goals. And was also a very steely, hard player.
Yeah.
No doubt about that. He was tough. So although I think I've got a lot of skill going through my team, I've got a lot of hardness as well. So he's not essentially in the middle of the midfield. He could play there. I'd like him out on that right wing because he could beat a player. He wasn't like David Beckham, who couldn't beat an egg, let alone beat a player. He was everyone. When I read this track and what I've watched with David Beckham about how great he was, I mean, he's got more caps than Bobby Moore, but played something like, I don't know, 10 or 12 hours. He played less time than Bobby did, despite having, because he came on so many times as a sub. They was giving him caps at the end of his career. He could cross a ball, he could ping a ball in from an angle, but he couldn't go past a player. He just couldn't do it. It wasn't his game.
No.
But mind you, if I can just tell a quick thing, he did earn my respect once on the television. He was interviewed and he was talking about pressure. I think it was the game we played Greece when he scored the free kick or whatever it was he scored. And the commentator, the interviewer, said to him, did you feel under any pressure when you were taking that kick with a minute to go or whatever? And he said, no. He said, being under pressure for me is taking a corner at Upton Park. He said, that's pressure. And I thought, fair play to you, mate.
Yeah.
That was the first time.
Taking that first game back after the World Cup '98. It was the first game, weren't it? And there was effigies of him hung on the Lyle gates and stuff. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, it was great. So I admired him after that. But
fair enough.
Martin Peters, leads him. Anyway, so there we go.
We had one of the guy I work with West Ham. The guy does the announcing, a guy called Martin Godliman. He put Peters. He supported West Ham because of Martin Peters. He'd obviously, he saw the World Cup, and he was like, getting into football. He wanted to find out about this guy Martin Peters, and obviously what team he played for and all that. And so he was obsessed with Martin Peters. Obviously back in the day, but obviously back in the 60s, 70s, obviously we know there was no internet or like Twitter or stuff. So if you'd missed the news, or missed a newspaper, you don't know where players have moved to. So basically, his first game, he went to Tottenham away in the 70s, and he thought, right, I'm going to see Martin Peters. And obviously, he'd missed the news report that he'd moved to Tottenham, and so he turns up, and on the back of the program, he's got Peters playing for Tottenham, and obviously Greaves playing for West Ham. He's like, what? But he still supported West Ham. But it's a lovely story. But yeah, he's a top, amazing man. Right, okay, Martin Peters is in. Who is next then, Terry?
Right. He's in the centre of the midfield, someone who always got the ball for you, rarely lost it, very rarely misplaced a pass, wasn't a flamboyant player, but was a great player in my opinion, was Ronnie Boyce.
Nice.
Ronnie, he would get the ball for you, he'd run all day. I mean, we all know they called him Ticker. He got the ball, he could carry the ball. He was a much underrated player, and I think again he suffered from the problem of so many good players running in those days for England, and he was very underrated. I mean, he played for England at schoolboy level, I think. but he could have gone on to do a lot more. And I even saw him towards the end of, or not always towards the end of his career, but a couple of times when Bobby was not playing, and Kenny had obviously left then. He played centre half a few times and did it very well. His idea of a tackle in those days, he would often lay down and get the ball. He'd sort of go on his side and he'd get the ball like that. But he never wasted the ball. And what he could do, he could lay a ball off. A good example of that, I think, was in the Cup Winners' Cup final for our first goal, when the ball came in. He was in a good position, quite far up the field for Ronnie, but he didn't try and crash it. He laid it for Alan Seeley, who smashed it in. And of course, who can forget the semi-final and the final when he got the 2 goals against Man United? I mean, that was one of the greatest days of my life watching West Ham that day. And Ronnie was superb. And, I mean, the pitch was like a ploughed field. I think had it stopped raining, the game would have been abandoned. I think the fact it was raining throughout the game probably kept the pitch a bit moist. It kept moving. And Ronnie worked and worked and worked. And that's another good story that both Ronnie and Eddie have told me over the years, that the week before we went over there, saw them play United at Upton Park. We got beat 2-0 at home. I think Man United made 7 changes from their usual team. Beat us 2-0, beat us easy. And Dave Gaskell apparently said to Eddie after the game, "No point you turning up next week." And both Eddie and Ronnie said they were in the tunnel before the game. The Dagenham Girl Pipers were providing the pre-match entertainment. Eddie said they came off, and the Man United players were all laughing, putting their arms around the girls, having a laugh with them. And he said, we all looked at each other, and he said that was the first time. He said, I really thought we can do these today. He said, because I went there, and most of us just did not expect to beat Manchester United.
No.
He said, but at that moment, we suddenly thought they're taking the piss out of us. And we could do them, and they did. That was
brilliant.
That was such a team performance that day. Everyone worked and worked and worked. And again, you saw Bobby, as I said earlier, we saw it in the World Cup as well. That was an occasion he got the ball, beat a couple of players, took the ball up and laid that great ball for Jeff to score the 3rd and decisive goal. Just incredible. So that's why Ronnie's in there, because he would run all day for you, never stop working. And a bit like, I think I might have used the expression earlier on with somebody else, can't remember now, but Patsy Holland was the same. Billy Bonds once said to me about Patsy Holland, he'd run through a brick wall for you. And that's what Ronnie was like. You know, Ronnie gave everything for the team.
And you need that, and you need those players. You know, you know, the guys who aren't going to be. You know, if you put an 11 of that, you know, Ronnie Boyce he'll be in the mix, but he won't be the first name on the team sheet that you remember him. He'll be Bobby Moore and Peters. But you need those, you know, and that's
those type of players.
You do. And what's funny is when we interview the ex players, there's certain players who always get picked by the ex players, which don't get picked by the fans. And you mentioned, you said, you know, like about, you know, Lampard and how we watch games differently and things like that. And every generation has that sort of Ronnie Boyce player, you know, whether it's you know, whether it's, you know, I know Hayden Mullins back in the 2000s, he was that sort of, not comparing to Ronnie Boyce, but he was that sort of workman-like attitude.
Could I just interrupt you just a second?
Of course you can.
That you mentioned Hayden Mullins. In all the years I've watched West Ham, I really disliked Alan Pardew with a vengeance. Disliked him. I thought he was a horrible man. I really did. I was supplying the meat to the club at the time, and I sort of fell foul of him. We got beat 1-0 home by Brighton one night. And we were dire. They scored in the last minute, Brighton. The ball came right across the face of our goal, and someone tapped it in the far post. And after the game, at that time, I had 6 hospitality seats in the Castle Suite, as you taking my customers there. And after the game, I was coming down the stairs, and he'd obviously just come out of the changing rooms, all suited up, was going to go up in the lift to the directors. I looked at him, and he sort of nodded at me. I said, "The clock's ticking for you, Mr. Pardew." He said, after a performance like that, I said, "The clock is ticking for you." Anyway, next day, I get a call from the chef saying he wants me to stop buying the meat from you. He said, I'm not going to. He said, I've told you you give the best meat. He said, but Terry, he said, don't wind him up. I said, I saw him, and anyway, that's a little bit off the track about Mullins.
I love it. Yeah.
What really was put the tin hat on it for me with Pardew, was we've got a fella who's played 20 odd times for Argentina in midfield, one of the great up and coming players. He picks Aidan Mullins. I know. I'm not being detrimental to Aidan Mullins. He was all the things you said. He worked hard. He did. But
he weren't a World Cup, Champions League, Premier League. He's won the lot, old Mascherano, didn't he? Brilliant,
unbelievable. He just picked Aidan Mullins. But there you are. As I said earlier, it's all about opinions.
It is a game of opinions, right? So Ronnie Boyce. Anyway, who's going to be next? Who's next, then, Terry?
Next. Now we've got to have the skillful players. We've got Martin already, but it can only be Trevor. Trevor Brooking. What can you say about Trevor? He could beat players both ways. You ever seen a player? I haven't seen it for West Ham who could drop a shoulder like Trevor could drop a shoulder.
No, that's what everyone says about him. Yeah,
and just let the ball run. And he did that. I saw him playing the youth team when I thought he was a big lumbering hulk. He had skill, but he tended to lumber. Well, that was how I saw him anyway.
Yeah.
But I saw him score a hat trick once against Sheffield Wednesday, I think, when he was playing. He played centre forward for a little while, and he scored a hat trick. But what a player! Yeah. The pass ball, his perception. He knew where everybody was. I like Bobby. Bobby had that vision looking forward. And one of the big things at West Ham, they were always taught back in the day. They probably do it today, I don't know. But at West Ham, there were two things they were really taught. A was always play side on. Always when you're receiving the ball, you've got to be side on. So you can go both ways with the ball.
Yeah.
Trevor did that all the time. And the other thing that every West Ham team knew, and I said they played it through the reserves, the youth team into the first team, was the third man running to get onto the ball. You lay the ball up and knock it back. Third man comes past and gets the return pass. Trevor, he exploited all that, and he had another strong player.
Yeah,
he was a ball player, but as I've already said, he was big. It was difficult to knock off a ball, and he could shield it. He could get the ball down that side of him, and he could run with it. And one of the best I ever saw about to do that at West Ham was Johnny Dick. Big dangling number 10, only had 1 foot to score goals with. But on the ball, when he was running, he was able to keep the ball on one side. It was very difficult to get the ball off him without fouling him. And that's what Trevor could do. And Trevor got us lots of free kicks because he could do that. He could turn, he could take the ball facing his own goal, turn with it. He could do anything with a football. Great player.
Amazing player.
Another quick story. Ernie Gregory's funeral, went there, and a group of us were standing there, and I was talking to Trevor, and I said, Ernie gave me a great story about you, Trevor. He said, yeah, come on then, let's hear it. He said, you all know Ernie's stories. I said, well, you know how he liked Lenny Gordon, don't you? He said, yeah. He said, we all know how he liked Lenny Gordon. I said, well, he said to me one day, he said, Terry, he said, Trevor Brooking, what a lovely man. Lovely man. So intelligent, he said. Great player. Can't deny it, great player, he said. Couldn't lace Lenny Gordon's boots. He said, couldn't lace his boots. You know. And Trevor laughed, and fair play to him. He laughed, old Trevor. But he was a great player. Yeah. He could have played a lot more times for England. It was so unfortunate he got injured along with Keegan for Ron's World Cup. That was difficult.
Because you said those two together, arguably two of the best players in England, in that midfield. And and two of the best possibly in Europe as well, and it just, you're right that it's like, and I'm not comparing them at all, but when we had obviously Lampard and Gerrard in the middle for England, and they could never play together, it never worked well.
Never worked, did it?
No. But
Worked well.
And he's one of those players, I think, Brooking, who, and everyone talks about that for how he would just like open his body up and he would do
Just
the
let
same.
the ball run.
Yeah, just never touch. His first touch wasn't a touch. And it was like, and I've watched a lot of clips because people are talking about that. So, and it's so true. And as you said, people like Martin and Trevor, and they were so skillful. And you mentioned it before on these bogs of pitches as well. And it's like,
that's right.
I'd love one of those. They do virtual. I'd love them to do some sort of virtual thing and see what these players would be like on the bowling greens now. And vice versa.
Absolutely.
And vice versa.
Absolutely,
I'd like to see Messi on that Stamford Bridge pitch when we beat them 4-0 in 85, 80. Let's see if you can do it on a sandbank in Stamford Bridge rather than New Camp.
Right. And Upton Park, of course, depending on the time of the year, was either a mud heap or a dust bowl in those days. It really was. But it was, how they played football on it sometimes, I don't know. Braybrook was a lovely man, Peter, but he could tell stories. He was said, they played against Aston Villa one day. He said, and we beat them, frozen pitch. He said, and Ron said, we couldn't let the ball touch the ground. We had to play the ball on the volley. He talked like West Ham would never put the ball on the ground the entire match. And quarter in, they volleyed every single ball. But there you go.
Oh, amazing.
Anyway, so Trevor.
Trevor. Who's on the left? Who's on the left then?
Well, I think you could guess that really. What I've tried to do in my team as well, when I was thinking about it, was Billy and Martin knew one another and fitted well with each other. Moore made his debut alongside Campbell, and they knew each other. Although he wasn't there that long, after Bobby made his, but they knew they fitted together.
Yeah.
And on the left-hand side, you're going to be Devonshire. Yeah. Trevor and Devonshire, the understanding they had was unbelievable. Devonshire, the first day he was over there at training ground, he was reportedly sick as a dog when he got over there, because obviously he'd not done that level of training. He'd been to a fry-up breakfast or something beforehand. And it took him a long while to get into it, but once he got in the side, he was a revelation, Alan. He could run like a whippet, couldn't he? Again, he could go by players inside and outside. The understanding, him and Brooking, going back a long time when I was a young man, we had Johnny Haynes, not for us obviously, but playing for Fulham. And in those days, they used to pass the ball what they called inside the fullback. So between the fullback and the wing half, as they were in those days, diagonally across there, so the winger could run behind him, and the fullback obviously in trouble there, he's trying to turn. And that sort of went out of fashion. But Trevor and Alan could do that. They'd play the ball between defenders. He'd put the ball through the eye of a needle, Trevor would, practically, to get it to Alan. And Alan would be in behind there. And they just knew each other inside out. They interchanged. Trevor wouldn't stay out on the wing, but he'd go on the outside, get a ball, drop his shoulder, go past, and then he'd be running on for the next ball. One day, when one of my sons was born, we were playing Preston at home in the second division. Second division it was there. And we won 5-0, I think. But on that Saturday, my wife had gone into hospital. She'd gone into labour, and I went with her. Didn't see it. Aidan wasn't born that day. He was induced. Next day, West Ham were on the big match. So I never saw that because Aidan hadn't come along. But I'd seen it afterwards. And again, this is what I say about younger people seeing these things on television. I only saw it on the TV. There was a ball where the ball was played out to Alan on the left wing. He stunned it back to Trevor, who was just inside him. And Trevor, from only a couple of feet, he did like a chip shot in golf. He chipped it up like that, And it come down on the green, went straight down behind the defender. Alan ran behind him, put it in the net. It was incredible. And they could do that time and time and time again. Again, Alan was unlucky with that injury against Wigan. I know he came back, but he was never the player he was before that injury.
No, he was different, wasn't he? I mean, that shows that the makeup of that sort of a player from a different era. In that, you know, if you look like, you know, again, not putting anyone in comparison, but look at Antonio now. Antonio's hamstrings are like jelly, you know, and so, but that's all he can do. That's his game. Where obviously Devonshire got done, he couldn't be that whippet anymore. He had to become a more tricky player and redevelop himself, which is something which you don't see nowadays. You know,
no, you don't.
And
but he had
so,
that great ability to do that. You're absolutely right. He did. Yeah. He reinvented himself, and I wouldn't say he became a better player, but he became
a different player,
better all-round player, maybe.
Yeah.
But he had tremendous pace as well over a short distance, and my only criticism of, and it wasn't actually of Alan, it was more about the way I perceived that John was asking him to play, was he quite often made a run from too deep inside his own half, I thought. He quite often ran, and by the time he got outside the penalty area, he sort of ran into a corridor sometimes.
Gotcha.
But once if he picked up the ball in 10 yards inside our half, he became a totally different prospect for a defender to contain him then. But no, he was wonderful, Alan. You know, I've seen some good players, but he was a wonderful player.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And for $5,000.
$5,000, yeah, that's right. And that was Eddie Bailey. Eddie Bailey signed him, didn't he? Eddie Bailey.
And you know, what can you get for $5,000 now? Second-hand Fiesta, maybe for $5,000.
That's right. Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
it's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah.
What he'd be worth in today's money. But right, okay, we'll put Devo in. Okay, Devo is in. Okay, up front then, playing 4-4-2. First striker then, my friend.
First strikers is obviously Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff Hurst is your main centre forward. Again, I saw him develop his career through the youth team.
Of course, yeah.
And he was a wing half. And again, I've already used the expression, but he was a lumbering wing half. He really was. Ernie told me they tried to get him off to Shrewsbury at one time when he was playing wing half. And Ron apparently said to Ernie, I've got an idea what I might like to do with him. And obviously tried him up front. And honestly, Russ, I spoke earlier about players who could take the ball coming into them. Well, Jeff, as a wing half, was always used to the ball coming to him, facing the way he's going. Now he's having to take the ball with his back to goal and trying to control the ball. And quite often, you'd see a long kick from defence. I used to call it long passing at West Ham rather than a long kick. And you'd see him jump up, and as he hit the ground, the ball would pass over his head. Initially, he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But he worked and he worked and he worked and became such a great player. And he was a great exponent of what I said of the side, taking the ball sideways on.
Yeah.
And also third man running. He knew how to lay that ball off. He could play either part of that little trio. Absolutely superb. Strong as a horse, wasn't he? And, you know, you see players in those days like your Bremners and your Hunters, who was described by Norman Burtonshaw, the referee, as a good, honest clogger. He described him on television once. These players, Ron Harris, they would crash through the back of these forwards, and Jeff used to get up and he'd brush his shorts down, get up and walk away. God knows what would happen to players today if they got to it. The games will be abandoned because teams like Leeds wouldn't have a player left on the pitch.
No,
they really wouldn't.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And these days, Russ, when we was at school and we watched players in professional football, when you tackled, you got one foot alongside the ball, the other foot was behind the ball, and you tackled man to man. That's how you tackle somebody. Nowadays, they fling themselves in from God knows how far away. they're on their arses most of the time, and if you're sliding in, you're not going to get the ball very often.
No.
But Jeff had to put up with all that, and it didn't faze him. He could do all that. Great header of the ball, cannonball of a shot with either foot. And once he got on a run, he was difficult to stop. Again, because he could shield the ball. He could shield the ball. Great physique. Loved him as a centre forward. Loved him absolutely. And he could score goals from either side of the goal with his head. Didn't matter. He could flick them. He could thump them. He could do what he liked. And he got his neck into it. You know.
Yeah.
He didn't just sort of flick. He did do the odd flick, but what bang he used to go, and he could hit a ball. He hasn't. Funny enough, he hasn't got dementia.
No, he hasn't. No.
You know.
No, he hasn't. No.
But no, and there's not much we can say about Jeff because we all know how great he became. But he did it, Russ, because he worked and worked and worked at his game, and that's what he did. And he became a great player, like young Frank Lampard.
Yeah.
I can't understand the way the supporters decry him because he worked so hard at his game. I used to watch him over the training ground when everyone else was gone and he was still there, and he became a great player at Chelsea. He really did become a great player. Like Rio, we never saw the best of Rio at West Ham.
No.
But Jeff, when he left to go to Stoke, I understood it, but I was gutted when he went to Stoke. Then he came back and scored a winning goal against us, the bugger.
Happens too often, doesn't it?
Too often, yeah. But he was a good player. Great player.
And I once had a wee next to him.
Did you?
There we go.
There we go.
There we go. It was me. I was in the middle between Sir Jeff and Sir Clive Woodward. And I was in the middle. A rose in between two thorns at the Sports Awards many years ago. But yeah.
I was once just very quickly, this is not football, but I was at Lord's one day watching the Nets day before the Lord's test. And I went into the toilet, nobody in the ground, just the two teams netting, a few photographers, walked into the toilet under the mound stand, and standing next to me, and there's a huge toilet, I'm sure you've been to Lord's, how big these toilets are. Was Bob Hoskins. And I said to Bob Hoskins, hello, I said, what are you doing here? He said, I'm having a piss, aren't I?
Good to talk.
What he was really doing, he said, what I'm here for, he said, I'm taking over the BT advert from Maureen Lipman.
Oh, there we
go. He was doing the BT advert, so that's what he was there for. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So there you go. There's nothing to do with it. You can edit that out at the end.
No, not at all. I love it. And apparently, Sir Jeff Hurst tells everyone that he had a wee next to me. So there we go.
I can imagine. My God.
There we go. God, he might have scored a hat trick in the FA in the World Cup final. He might have done that. But
I got a laugh at Jeff's expense one day when we had the X magazine. I did a bit with Tony McDonald on the X magazine. Yeah. And we held a dinner at the Britannia Hotel for the 1964-65 cup winning teams.
Sure.
And we asked the club to take a seat at a table, and they wouldn't because £900 wasn't in their budget. Well, first of all, Tony rang them up and said, have you got any arrangements, any celebrations? And they said no. So that's when we decided, well, we would do the dinner.
Yourself, yeah.
And they wouldn't take a table because it was too expensive. But anyway, on the night, Tony railroaded me into doing a little thing before the game started, before it all started, the dinner. And I was talking about the various players who were all going to be there. And sadly, Jeff couldn't be there. And I said, unfortunately, Jeff can't be here tonight because he's working for McDonald's. And everyone was really laughing. But it was true. He was working for McDonald's as an ambassador. It was either the cup final, I think, when we had that dinner Friday night. He was working for McDonald's, yeah. It gets a bit touchy, Jeffrey, sometimes. Do you send this podcast to Jeffrey, do you, by any chance?
Jeff may well, I don't think Jeff watches it. I don't think he knows what we do, but yeah. Yes. It does. I don't care.
It can be very prickly, Jeffrey.
Yeah, well, I think everyone can when it's their own, when it's their, it's their, what's the word? their persona.
Their reputation, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean, I know the fact that you haven't picked Ray Stewart, he'll have the ump with you.
Well, I said nice
You
things
said
about
lovely
Ray.
things about him, and that's the thing. That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
He covered
He'll
across
watch the whole
pitch.
thing. He does. He
Fantastic.
phones me. He phoned me to tell me about Terry Creasy's one, and how he was happy that he got picked. And he said, "I tell you, what I don't like. Oh, Ben Shepherd. Ben Shepherd didn't pick me." And I was like, "He did actually pick you." You went, "What? Okay. Maybe it's something else." But anyway, but yeah, it's all fun.
I'd like to meet that Ben Shepherd. He seems like a nice bloke.
He's a top boy, Ben. He's a top boy, Ben. Yeah, really salt of the earth, and I don't think people realise there's certain people I've interviewed. I don't think people realise that how much of a West Ham fan they are. Are they because they do stuff with the club or stuff like Oh, okay, but he is a proper fan, and no, I think he's a top boy, Ben is, and yeah, back doing the next series of tipping points. So it'd be
Yes, yeah. Well, being an old boy, I do sit and watch daytime television a bit, and I watch Jeremy Vine.
Yeah,
I can't bear all of it, but I do watch it. But I always watch when Ian Dowell's on there.
Yeah, we've had Ian on. Yeah, he's a lovely guy.
He's great. I love listening to him, and he's got the same opinions as I have about life, so it's good. Anyway,
love it. Right, okay. Who's Hurst going to partner up front?
Have a guess. Come on, have a guess.
I'm going to say David Di Michele. No.
No. Anyway, there's only one man. My favourite ever West Ham player, ex-Ham, was Johnny Byrne. Budgie Byrne. Who did so much to contribute to the player that Jeff became. Yeah. He was. I don't understand this, but they say these days about a false number 9. Well, perhaps Johnny was a false number 9. I don't know. What I do know is that when he first came into the team, he was a touch player, John, and he found it so difficult, and the crowd got on his back. And I think in his first 41 games, he scored 11 goals. And this is a bloke who was £65,000. The fans weren't overly infused with John. But as I say, he was a touch player, and when he made a mistake, didn't control the ball, it showed up like anything. But he went on to play, I think, 206 games for West Ham, something like that, and he scored 108 goals. So from 41 games with 11 goals, he then played a further 160 games and scored 90 goals. Unbelievable that he did that, and he honestly could do anything with a football. Russ, he'd play the ball with the outside of his foot, he'd play it with his heel, he could play it with the back, he could play it with everything. The most defining game for him when we played Leeds and beat them 7-0, and a game with Swansea in the cup. First of all, when we played Swansea in the FA Cup, Noel Dwyer came back in goal for them. A real muddy day, pouring the rain, and Jim was drop kicking the ball, and it was coming down to Budgie, right foot, left foot, on the volley, out to Braybrook and Sissons. Did it all night long. Absolutely superb. And he did the same against Leeds. Instead, he was volleying the ball, but what he was also doing was Jim would drop kick the ball out to him.
Yeah.
And he would catch the ball on his instep, on his right instep, and turn with it on his instep, and he'd go past Jack Cholton. And he must have done that half a dozen times to Jack Cholton. He absolutely slaughtered him. You wouldn't comprehend how good he was that night. Sure. And he scored loads of goals. He scored a great volley against Burnley in the 6th round of the Cup. He could dribble past players. I've got a lovely photograph of Johnny against Blackpool. He didn't actually score, but it's about 5 defenders. One's on one knee, one's laying down. And the goalkeeper, Tony White, just took the ball off his foot because he just knocked the ball that little bit too far. But he could do anything. And he had such a perfect understanding. As I said earlier, I tried to get players who understood one another, like Trevor and Trevor and Alan,
Yeah.
Martin and Bobby, and you sort of had Bobby and Cantwell.
Yeah.
So you've got to have these little pockets of the team that know how they all played, and those two gelled fantastically. And of course, with Ronnie supplying them, Martin getting crosses in and slipping balls through. I've never seen that better. Di Canio, fantastic player.
Yep.
What a player, Di Canio. But I couldn't fit him into the way I wanted the team to play.
No,
but a great player. He really was. I mean, but Budgie could do all that. Honestly, he could bend the ball from way out. He could bend the ball, and he could hit a penalty. He didn't miss many penalties, Johnny, either. He was good. I saw him score a goal from the penalty spot with his chest. Ball came over and he went bang, and he hit him on his chest, and it flew past. I think it was Peter Springett playing for Sheffield.
Wow.
Not Ron Springett, but his brother. So for me, never been a player like Johnny at West Ham.
Sure.
I met him, first time I met him was when they had the Bobby Moore stand opening.
Yep.
And Ronnie phoned me one night and he said, Terry, they're opening the Bobby Moore stand, they want to get all the old players over. He said, but I know where one or two of them are. He said, can you help me out with some addresses? Which I did. And for that, Ronnie got me that I could sit with all the old players before the game and after the game in the bar. It was fantastic. And I had some West Ham books that I may or may not know I do collect autographs. And Johnny, there's two books, the Breedon books, West Ham United, A Complete History. And he sort of went through it page by page in the 60s, and he signed everything he saw, every picture he saw. Wow. And he said to Peter Story, "Oi, Peter," he said, "give me this book. I want this book." And he was great. And he was drinking like a good one. He was fantastic. But he abused himself. You know, he went up like a rocket and came down like a damp squib, really, because he abused his body. You know, and that was another good thing. We, of our age, we could go in the retreat at Chigwell Row, Wednesday nights, Thursday nights, maybe, and the players would be in there having a drink. Yeah. You know, going the Black Lion after the game, and half hour after we got there, the first player would pitch up, and provided you didn't make a nuisance to yourself, you could talk to them all. It was good. They went into their back room there, but you could go in if you wanted to get an autograph or you just wanted to say something, and you could do it. Yeah. But Johnny was fabulous. I can't say any more about Johnny. He was incredible. His close control was good, and he catch it on his chest. Wonderful. Yeah. In fact, I feel quite emotional about it, to tell the truth. I can just see it. I mean, do you know I can see it.
Yeah, no, I get that, and in theory, you know, you sort of living a lot of memory. I mean, that's why I love doing the shows, because you are sort of going back through memories and the happier times as well. You know, younger times, and it is, you know, and it's funny how West Ham sort of, you know, you're sort of attaching certain eras to certain times of your life, because that's obviously how it works. And you know, people say, you know, usually. Someone mentioned it to me once that, you know, your favorite type of music was when you was a teenager. And I think that's true with football players as well. I think my favorite football players were sort of that sort of John. I mean, I was born in 81. So yeah, sort of like, you know, Trevor Morley, John Moncur, Ian Bishop. Those are my idols. And you know, obviously fortunate enough to have met a lot of them. And as you said, talking about, you know, Budgie and Jeff and Martin, obviously, and Moro, obviously, many who are no longer with us as well. You know, it is a bit, it's quite cathartic, I think, but people love it and love hearing the stories. And yeah, I love it. It's great interviewing all the ex-players, but I love talking to fans who have lived through all those eras and just, you know, almost like recording a lot of memories, which might not end, but you know, I know old Creasy wants to write a book, but he's But it doesn't matter. He's recorded a lot of them. And same as you, some of these stories, some of these little anecdotes are just, and particularly with the older players, you get more of them because they were more approachable and there was this more connection. I haven't had many anecdotes about, I don't know, no disrespect to anyone, but, Manuel Lanzini being in the co-op. I don't get those stories.
It's never going to happen, is it?
It's never going
to happen. I mean, one of the funniest things I remember, which is a bit off-piece, about West Ham, I went down the training ground when I was to see the chef, and when Ian Wright was there.
Yeah.
And I went there, and he had just got this, I can't remember what car it was now, but it was one where you could press the button and the roof went up and down. And he's out in the car park with his jockstrap, and a few of the other players, and they're all hooting away, and they're all fucking hilarious. They think it was great, That was that era, I suppose.
Yeah,
he was all right. He was right to talk to.
He was all right,
that shows how fickle fans are. We all didn't like Ian Wright, do we? But as soon as he scored those 2 goals, it was
exactly. I mean, we've particularly the modern era, the way footballers tend to move about from club to club. Yeah, you hate them when they're, someone like Kevin Nolan. I mean, Kevin Nolan, we hate him when he was at Bolton and Newcastle. As soon as he's West Ham, he's like, one of the most underrated captains we've ever had. And now he's even more so because being in the, Craig Bellamy and people like that, he's our bastard. Yeah, he's a bastard, but he's our bastard. When he's our bastard, we like him, and
David Speedy.
Oh, Speedy. That goal, 92, Cambridge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right.
Even Clive Allen. God, I remember that. That was my first season. That was my first season at West Ham. So I was a glory hunter. I came in just as we got promoted to the Premier League. I remember that season. I remember that game, that Cambridge 6. I was in the West Stand lower, and I'd almost got knocked out by a rope ladder that someone had somehow got into the ground and then thrown it from the top tier over, and people were going down the rope ladder to get onto the pitch. Nowadays you can't even have a cap on your bottle.
No. When you first started supporting, as you said, I saw that 57-8 promotion side.
Yeah.
But when that next season started, as a 12-year-old kid in the first division, first time in 26 years.
Yeah.
And my dad took me to Portsmouth. That's the last game he took me to. We went to Portsmouth on the opening day of the season away, beat them. 2-1, I think. We beat them anyway. On the Monday night, we played at home to Wolves, the great Wolves team. I was so excited about seeing the old gold of Wolves shirts.
Yeah.
And we beat them 2-0. Johnny Dick scored the first goal. And then on the following Saturday, we beat the Villa 7-2 at home. 7-2. Man, the first 3 games in the top division, and you smashed these teams. And it was great as a kid. Great. Anyway. Brilliant. Taking a lot of your time.
Brilliant. No, man, I've absolutely loved every minute of it. There's the team. There's the team.
Oh, it's all
there.
There
It is. There it is, my friend.
That.
There it is, buddy. There it is.
It's great. Looks a good team to me.
It's a great team. And what I love about doing these shows is, like, we've had maybe someone talk about Budgie before, so I've gone on then done a bit of research about him. As you said, like, his goals per game ratio was mental, and Noel Campbell and Ronnie Boyce. Obviously I've heard of these players, but not really know much about them. Obviously, everyone knows about Bobby Moore and stuff like that. But Budgie particularly, and Campbell, and you mentioned Johnny Harris and Sissons and all these players. Yeah. It's really it's just a privilege really talking to people like yourselves, because so much history. You've lived through it all. Through it all. And I really, really appreciate your time. Almost, not quite, but almost the longest episode we've had. Almost.
Right.
If you've got a 3-minute anecdote, you'd get the top. You get the top one.
A 3-minute anecdote. I don't know. But anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's really
thank you, Terry, and obviously thank you to everyone for watching. Good luck to everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. And from myself and from Terry, take care, everyone. Stay safe. Wash those hands. Get those jabs when you get your appointments. Soon everyone gets jabbed, but soon everything gets back to normal.
Got my one April the 16th. My second jab, April the 16th.
I've had my first one. I had my first one a few weeks ago. The lockdown has not been kind to me. Let's say the old lockdown body wasn't kind, but because of that, I got bumped up a little bit. So I got mine a few weeks earlier because I'm not for age, because I'm fat. That's it. Fair enough. Tell at the end of the day, I might have a few extra pounds. I might have a few extra pounds, but I'll be on the beach. Sunbathing. All the slim gyms will be still.
Unfortunately, my partner, who you saw right at the start there, she said she saw me in my underpants the other day. She said, "You're like a fucking old man." She said, "Skinny little legs hanging out the bottom of your pants." I've actually lost in the last few months. I've lost over 2 stone in weight for some reason. Nothing nasty apparently, but I'm only lost.
I've done the same. I started the last month. I sort of went, right, okay, that's enough now. I don't know why I haven't done it for the past year, but anyway, the last month for some reason, and it's a lot more walking. And it's easier. It's easy when it's nice weather, isn't it? When in the winter, you don't want to lose weight or go walking.
Last year was great, wasn't it? Walking every day.
Last year, it was piss easy, wasn't it? The lockdown, because it was like 30 degrees. We had the pool out. Faden Boys would have been beautiful with all the flowers out and whatnot. And the winter's tough, and then now it's some sort of the spring's back. Then hopefully, things will get back to a bit of normality. And
fingers crossed they will. Fingers crossed the rest of the season.
Oh God, yeah. Only eight games to go, Terry. Only 8 games to go.
That's one thing. That's one thing I've found as I've got a bit older. It might be different this season.
Yeah.
But I used to get really upset when West Ham lost.
Really?
But
yeah.
I don't so much now. If we lose, I think
you've lived through it. You've lived through so many seasons, Terry. No disrespect, but you have, and it's like, so you go, oh well, it's just like in da da da, or it's just like, or obviously.
When you've stood there on a Boxing Day morning and get stuffed 8-2 at home, you know what that's.
Yeah.
Saw that game 8-2 at home. You think, oh, fuck's sake.
And obviously, as you said, the first, you won the first game when you first went, and then they put 4. The other team put 4 past them. The preceding 3 games. So you were already at this sort of level already. So I know what you mean. I'm still coming to your opinion now. I think I've had enough years. Not necessarily as many as yourself, but a lot of years where things, it was always. I remember for a long period, it was almost like I remember. We were like going to be 7th, and that was the thing. If we won, we go to 7th. And we never used to do it. This was a few years ago, and now we're 4th, and it's just a strange season. It's a strange season, but
it's unreal, isn't it?
Anyway, so I might as well enjoy it. Yeah, and actually now, Terry, it is the longest episode now. Congratulations! So there we go. Yeah, look at you just stringing at that. Yeah. Anyway, take care, everyone. Stay safe. Wash those hands. Cover your eyes. See you again very, very soon. Cheers, Terry. Take care, everyone. Much love. Bye-bye.